At this particular time, we'd like to ask that Pastor CJ would come and lead us in prayer. We're going to ask that Councilman Jackson would lead us in the pledge.
Let us pray. Oh, gracious and eternal God, how we thank you for this day. We thank you for your goodness and your mercy and your loving kindness toward us. God, we thank you for this city's leadership, our mayor, our chairman of this council, and all of our honorable council members and their staffs. God, we thank you for the great citizens of this city. We pray that you would be with them and cover them and keep them. And we pray today that as this meeting is conducted, we pray that decisions are made to better the city of Shreveport. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please recite with me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you be kind enough to call the roll?
Councilwoman Taylor.
Present.
Councilman Brooks.
Here.
Councilman Talaferro.
Here, ma'am.
Councilman Butcher. Councilman Jackson.
Here.
Councilman Green.
I'm here.
And Councilwoman Bowles.
Present.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the administrative conference meeting Monday, February 27, 2023, and the city council meeting Tuesday, February 28, 2023?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Bowman, second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Yay.
Thank you. Does any council member have any awards, recognition, or distinguished guests not to exceed 15 minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Councilwoman Taylor.
I'd like to call Shannon Livingston to the mic, please. Ms. Livingston is representing Southern University at Shreveport and their Small Business Development Department with an event that is critical to small business owners and business owners within the city of Shreveport and abroad. So please tell us about your event.
So thank you so much, Councilwoman Taylor. Yes, this event that we have coming up, we partner with Mission to Fix It Business Academy to put together a Meet the Lenders event. It's going to be on March 22nd from 5 until 7 at the Office Hub downtown Shreveport. And we're doing this because we service our entrepreneurs, people who are interested in starting a small business, and people who are already small business owners. We offer them services. We help them with putting together a business plan, putting together a marketing plan, identifying certifications that they may qualify for. But one of the main things they come to us about is to start a business and how to finance that business. And so we have about 15 lenders who have already confirmed to be at this event on March 22nd. Confirmations are still coming in. Entrepreneurs will have a chance to be introduced to these lenders who will give them information about what type of industries, what type of loans they have an appetite to serve. And so one of the special treats on that day is our Region 6 Administrator, Mr. Ted James, and our SBA Deputy District Director, Ms. Joanne Lawrence, will be on hand as well to give them updates about the SBA. So we're asking that you help us to promote this event. And then tomorrow, March 15th, is National SBDC Day. And so we're asking that you help us promote our Southern University at Shreveport Small Business Development Center and the services that we offer because it's absolutely free to our entrepreneurs. And so that's what I wanted to come here today, for you to help us to promote those two things.
Thank you so much.
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in honor of National Women's Month, we do have a proclamation honoring the resolution honoring the countless contributions of women, not only in our community, but across the United States. and we will vote on that resolution on today.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Councilwoman.
On behalf of the mayor and the city council, we're going to acknowledge retired Teachers Month on March 16th. So we want to acknowledge that they are here. You're mostly all students' best friends. First people they see, learn about, go to them with their problems. We really appreciate you. You'll never be discontinued. You've always been a part of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
Do we want to have the clerk to read that resolution into the record? Resolution 37.
A resolution proclaiming March 16th, 2023 as Retired Teachers Day in the city of Shreveport. Whereas Shreveport's retired teachers have devoted their careers to the education and training of countless of Shreveport's youth, and whereas Shreveport's retired teachers have provided job and social skills training for adults throughout the city, and whereas Shreveport's retired teachers have rendered valuable service in diverse leadership roles to their communities and institutions throughout their careers and continue to render such services as retirees. And whereas Shreveport's retired teachers represent the profession which is given the basic responsibility for launching the careers of state and national leaders and for laying the foundation for the welfare of all members of our society. And whereas Shreveport's retired teachers have toiled ceaselessly to improve the quality of life in the city, often in less than adequate circumstances and for less than adequate pay. And whereas Shreveport's retired teachers represent a tremendous pool of experience and training which remains dedicated to the betterment of society everywhere. And whereas Shreveport's retired teachers represent a loyal, patriotic, and concerned citizenry which provides a dedicated and dependable support to the leaders in our communities. And now therefore be resolved by the City Council of the City of Shreveport in due, regular, and legal session convened that the Shreveport City Council proclaims March 16th, 2023 as Retired Teachers Day in the City of Shreveport.
Will our retired teachers please stand and come down to the front? Don't you all teach at one time? Doc,
Not this time, Ted. On behalf of the retired teachers, we are presidents of the two different organizations in Shreveport, and on behalf of the retired teachers, we thank you for this recognition, and we appreciate that you appreciate us.
Yes.
Thank you.
I second that emotion. Thank you so much for having us here today. We do appreciate you.
Also, just like to say thank y'all. And Miss Mayor Nell, good to see you, who's my former boss. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
She was all our former boss.
Ladies, they're coming down to take a picture.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a very special guest, Resolution 38, Mr. Kerry Kemp. Mr. Kerry, would you come and bring everybody you have with you? We're going to ask that she would read Resolutions 38.
A resolution honoring Kerry D. Camp for his many years of contribution to the radio industry. Whereas Kerry has been a force in the radio industry and local media for almost 40 years. Whereas in 1984, Kerry D. Camp started in sales at Triple J Communications. And whereas years later, Kerry became sales manager of Multimedia Incorporated, where he was responsible for the revenue of KILL and KITT. And whereas in 1988, Kerry became the owner of KOKA AM, and in 1993, he acquired KDKS FM, and 1994, KLKL FM. And whereas, as the owner of 3 stations, the company was called the Radio Group. And whereas, in July of 2000, Kerry sold his company to Access One Communications, but stayed on as general manager for nearly 15 years. And whereas, as of today, Kerry continues to manage many of the stations he once owned as vice president and market manager at Alpha Media USA. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council for the City of Shreveport in due regular and legal and regular session convened that the Shreveport City Council honors Kerry D. Camp for his many years of contribution to the radio industry.
I'm not as old as what she said. I started when I was 8.
Kerry,
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to say thank you, man. You've done so much, and you do so much for so many. I'd really like to thank you for all of your work, and I really, really thank you for what you've done for the Christian community with KOKA. And you've blessed this community with all that you do and all that you've done. And we just want to say thank you today. And we're going to ask that everybody from the station to come on up, and we're going to take a picture. But at this time, have words of expression.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. And thanks to all the councilmen. You know, I feel like I know y'all because I've helped some of y'all get elected. And thoroughly enjoyed it, by the way. I always tell everybody, you come through the radio group or you come through Alpha Media today. We're not going to necessarily guarantee you're going to get elected, but you're going to use us, and we appreciate you. It's been a great time to be in the radio business the last 40 years almost. We've had so many things good going in our city, and I look forward to y'all putting great things together as we go forward. Getting to know business people and helping them, and I always tell a brand new salesman that comes to work for us, the day they call you after 5, they call you on Saturday, they call you on Sunday, isn't that right, Gary? That you got them won, and they trust you, and that's what it's all about. So I just pass my trust to my employees who do a wonderful job, by the way. We couldn't do anything if we didn't have everybody at the radio station. And thank you for trusting them. Thank you for trusting us as a medium, and thank you for keep using us. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Councilwoman Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Camp. It's known as Kerry. I have worked under your leadership, and it was pleasant. Your staff today is A1, and I always call on them because they're number one, and they did help me get elected, and a lot of more people that I supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Ursula.
Mr. Camp, what's not in the proclamation is all the lives that you've touched, all the people that's working for you. You can tell by the supporters that are behind you. I work with so many of the people that work under you, and they can't talk enough about your business savvy, your work ethic. So you're creating a whole bunch of mini-me's that are helping impact our community. So that's what stands out to me the most. And over those airways, you touch so many people just with the music, with the information. You allow us to express our voice and get that information out to the community. So your work is remarkable, and I'm glad you're celebrated today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Kerry, the community service that you give, I know that you talk about us being elected, but the community service in which you provide and the station provides is impeccable. I know during my journey with autism, you all were the leading station who brought autism out and to the radio listening audience. And I will never, ever forget you with that, with Quinn and Ferrari. And I also want to extend my sincerest condolences on the loss of one of your family members, Mr. Melvin Jones. That's where I always bought my ads until Arthur sat up there and Charles took my money.
Right.
Yes.
Hey, we thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chair. Carrie, thank you so much. It really is an honor for us to recognize you, a true leader in our community. There are things that, we are so thankful for because of you. Not only just the entertainment, actually, but because of I don't know how else to say it, but just the opportunity to come by, drink coffee, and just shoot the breeze, so to speak. So I appreciate everything that you've done for me personally through my law enforcement career, for my political career, and you are truly an icon in our community. We appreciate everything that you've ever done for us. And I see all your family, your friends, and your employees that when they say we're right behind you, they mean it. They're way behind you there. So,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
One last thing. All that being said, Kerry's brother's Petey's here, old friend of mine. And Petey said if he had had a chance to speak to us before this, that Kerry probably wouldn't have gotten this award. I'm kidding. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you, Gary.
Also, Kerry, before we come down and take a picture with all of you, I got to call a couple of names. I got to call my ambassador's name, Tasha and Rashida.
Please do.
And I got to let y'all know that Cousin Jenny, raise your hand, let them know. And Donald, and also Quinn and Pastor CJ. Thank all of you, and Miss Diane, thank you for getting them here. Mr. Mayor, would you join me down there? Would you
Chair,
all come on up?
just real quick.
Councilman Bucci, go ahead.
What you do is great. I have been a listener of your stations for years, and I mean, it's wonderful. I'm glad that you're getting the acknowledgement for helping the community. And one of the first races I ever ran in 2014, y'all walked me through it holding my hand. So I appreciate it. I also am friends with Pete. Our families go way back, and he called me last night and said, "Don't do it. Just stay away from it. Stay away from it." So, little sibling rivalry, but no, it's well deserved. Well
Thank
deserved.
you. I appreciate it, Grayson. Thank you. Whoever wants to join. Y'all got anything going on?
Okay. Can we get somebody on this side? Come on, just jump in here. Come on.
Bill, where you at? Come on. For the company picture, he came all the way from Columbia, South Carolina. He's the one I report to every day if I don't do right. No, return sideways now.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any awards or recognition of distinguished guests?
I do, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
and
sir.
I would like to ask the representatives of Norwella Council, Boy Scouts of America, to come forward.
Yes, sir.
You have some other, I see some other uniforms, Joe?
Yes, sir. If our board members would please stand or join me up front.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, this is a very special opportunity for me as a longtime scouter, as an Eagle Scout. I'm very proud to present this proclamation. Whereas the Norwella Council Boy Scouts of America has been providing scouting to youth since 1923 and demonstrating a long history of civic engagement and service during its tenure in Northwest Louisiana, and whereas the Norwella Council has made positive differences in the lives of thousands of young people and their families, preparing them to make ethical decisions over their lifetimes by instilling in them the values found in the Scout Oath and Law, and whereas the Norwella Council reaffirms its commitment to further the aims and values of scouting in the next century while celebrating its rich past and history of mentoring youth to be prepared for life. And now therefore be it resolved that I, Tom Arsenault, Mayor of the City of Shreveport, do proclaim March 30, 2023 as Norwella Council Day in the City of Shreveport and urge all citizens to join in the celebration of this special occasion. It is my special privilege to present this proclamation to Jeff Brasher. Jeff, would you introduce the folks that are with you?
Yes, sir. This is Major Thomas Edwards, one of our vice presidents, Karen Moss Barnes, one of our vice presidents, Chris Hacker, one of our advisory board members, Mark Welton, one of our committee chairs.
And you are Jeff Brasher, and you're the Chief Scout Executive for
Something
Norwella
like that,
Council.
yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you want to join me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I also like to apologize. I didn't see Pastor Alvin Mays over. They have a presentation that they would like to bring to the council today. I didn't see him in the chamber. Pastor Mays, would you all come, please? I'm so sorry. I didn't see you over there. I was thinking y'all didn't make it. It's Pastor Alvin Mays, and he's also the pastor of the Willow Shoot Baptist Church. And they have a short presentation that they would like to tell us about some good things that's happening in our city. Pastor Al Smith is also with them as well.
All right.
Yes.
Hang on just 1 second. Thank you. All right. Thank you all for having us. My name is Susan Caldwell. I serve All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church as Director of Religious Education, and our church is a member congregation of North Louisiana Interfaith. Interfaith is an organization made up of 24 congregations and civic organizations in the Shreveport-Bossier area. Our leaders seek to identify needs within our various neighborhoods, and then we work together across all the lines of faith and race and socioeconomics and politics and geography to address those needs and give ordinary citizens a voice in the decisions that concern them and their families. We're nonpartisan. We neither endorse nor contribute to candidates or parties. So one of those issues that comes up repeatedly in our community is that of disaster-related power outages. And as you can see from the headlines on this presentation, it's not trees falling on homes or high winds that's the leading cause of death and natural disasters. It's long-range power outages and the health effects of that. The next time that we see headlines like these, we would like to be ready with a plan. We want to be able to respond effectively, and today we want to show you a strategy that creates a way for us to plan ahead for disaster, the community lighthouse strategy. These disasters have both a human cost and an economic cost, and we feel like this strategy will minimize both of those. So this began with our sister organization in New Orleans right after Hurricane Ida. Churches and organizations found themselves unable to adequately address the needs of their community without power. And we have different kinds of disasters up here. Fewer hurricanes, but more tornadoes and definitely more ice storms. But our goal is the same, the capacity to take care of each other during a power or water outage. As you see from the slide here, our eventual plan is for a network of resilience hubs at 20 congregations and community institutions throughout the parish, each with its own commercial scale solar power battery and emergency water supply. 15 of these would be within the city limits and 5 in the outlying rural areas. And during outages, these institutions would immediately begin assessing needs in the neighborhoods and providing assistance. And so I'll now turn it over to Pastor Mays to tell you more about it.
First of all, to the mayor and Pastor Green and other council members, thank you for allowing us to make this presentation. As you've already discussed, this is how it works. There are basically two components. There's an infrastructure piece, and then there is a people piece. So let me first of all talk about the infrastructure piece. If the grid goes down, the battery kicks in immediately. Unlike gas generators that they sit idle with nothing to do until there's a power failure. But with this system, as soon as the grid goes down, the batteries automatically kick in and allows things to be able to continue. And so that it helps to restore the power quickly. The solar panels with battery backup are different, and that these assets are operating all of the time. Next slide, please. When the power fails, community lighthouses, the teams go into action, and we'll talk about the teams a little bit later on. They rely on previously conducted outreach and assessing needs to provide for those needs. Basically what the teams do, we will be training teams in the various communities to go out into their various communities within a 15-minute walking distance from each facility to assess the needs of those persons that are closest to them. There may be somebody in a house within that community who may need a nebulizer, who needs to keep on electricity. There may be somebody who is on, who needs insulin, who needs to have it kept in a refrigerated condition. And so that these hubs would also serve as charging stations, food preparation or distribution. They could also be utilized for cooling and for heating stations, as well as oxygen exchange and so forth. Let me be clear. These resilience hubs are not a shelter. They are just that, to provide short-term assistance for those who are the most desperate. And again, the most important part of this whole plan is the teams, because we would be identifying people, and they would be going out, as they say, claiming the turf, going door to door in their various communities to find out who are at need. At this time, I'll turn it over to Pastor Al Smith, and he can give you some more information.
Thank you, Chairman Green and Vice Chairman Taylor, Mayor and City Council. The reason why we believe that this incentive is so important is just not local or statewide. This is backed by the Department of Energy. It's vended by the Department of Energy. And along with that department, there are two technical partners, 127 Energy and Solar Alternative. Now, 127 Energy will really design the entire project and finance it. And then the Solar Alternative will actually be a part of the engineering and the installation of the program. This is an opportunity for us, next slide. It's an opportunity for us to understand and appreciate that the federal government will match the local dollars. So 50%, it will match 50% of what we build and the project expense. So that money that comes actually from the federal government will also be placed back into the treasury to build the next project center or the next lighthouse. Currently, right now, in New Orleans, Together New Orleans, is actually, they have started their pilot program. It is their intent to have 16 locations. 2 of the locations are already optable, and 1 is in the midst of waiting for the battery. So New Orleans is already on board, and they are doing the work. And so our appeal is for Shreveport to get on board so that we can do the work. Brother Nathaniel will come and give you some more information.
Thank you, Pastor Smith. Council and Mayor, I've met some of you, but not all of you. My name is Nathaniel Wills. I'm the organizer with North Louisiana Interfaith, and today I'm speaking on behalf of Pastor Jackson, who had an emergency. I wanted to present this part to you, but I'm going to do that the best I can in his stead. So next slide, please. We are going to build this in a pilot phase. The first phase will have 4 locations. As you can see, we've already determined 2 of these locations. One would serve the Highland Center, be served from the Highland Center and serve the Highland Stoner Hill neighborhood. And then the second institution that has committed to serving as one of these locations is Morning Star Baptist Church, which would of course serve the Moortown area. 2 more locations are being determined and assessed in the MLK area. Other parts of the city, we're looking at one right off Uri Drive, St. Paul's Episcopal Church. So we're looking at to have these all over the city, and I'll show you the full build out as we go on. But what is this going to cost? What is it going to cost to get through the pilot phase so that we can capitalize on some of these federal dollars and rebates that are available? Solar Alternatives has already conducted technical site visits both at Morningstar, and they've built a full budget for us for each of these locations. As you see on the screen here, for the PV modules and installation, right at $420,000. Batteries and electrical, $400,000. Design, permitting, and development is $218,000. So right at $1,050,000 to build these first 2 locations. At the top there, you can see what these locations will be able to do with that. And each one, one has a smaller amount of solar panels, but still the very large battery at 220 kilowatts of storage. So these will be high capacity centers that can service the community for multiple days in an outage situation. So we are here to ask the city to contribute seed funding to make this pilot possible. We have already asked Caddo Parish to contribute $500,000, and they're in process of vetting that and then voting on that. We want to ask the city council and the mayor to see if they can put in $400,000 to make this possible. Now, we are in talks with private foundations as well as our Public Service Commissioner, Foster Campbell. And we feel confident that all of those entities will also be putting in, but we are asking the city and the parish to take the lead. So let's talk briefly about the full build out. Next slide, please. Oh, it froze. Well, you'd be looking at a picture of 15 locations across Caddo Parish, 15 in the city and then 5 in the rural parts. How are we going to build that, right? We're asking the 2 governmental bodies here to put in $1 million. How are we going to build that? So partially on rebates gets us a little bit there because we can get, as Pastor Smith explained, we can get 50% back. And this is not a tax credit. We talked this through. This is not a tax credit. It's actually a check that they mail back to you for 50% of what you put into it. So it's a good way to leverage our local funds. But we have also been working with the governor's office. There is $5 billion for these exact type of hubs to be built all across the country. The governor's office is writing to request $500 million of this that would be spread around the state of Louisiana. So we want to make sure that we are built and ready and competent here in Caddo and Shreveport, and make sure that we have exemplified we can build a program like this, and we want to bring those funds here. In essence, we want to be first in line for those funds. So we're asking you today to take a hard look at this strategy and the opportunities that come with it. One, we have a chance to better care for one another in times of crisis to avoid death and tragedy. right? That's number one. And this is the community working with its governmental entities. We have a chance to double our money by making use of federal rebates, and we have a chance to prove that the city of Shreveport is taking the lead and ready to put a good chunk of that money forward to build this project. So I want to stop there. We only had 10 minutes, so I want to stop there, and we can bring any of us back up for questions or comments.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Just
Yes,
a quick
sir.
question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the presentation. Very, very interesting. To complete one location, you may have mentioned it. I may have missed it. What's an average time frame on that? Or is that too far out to even kind of?
They can be completed in about 2 months' time. But the holdup and the reason we want to get commitments is the batteries have a supply chain problem right now for the really large ones. The smaller locations we can build quickly. Y'all are familiar with the Tesla power walls. So not all of our locations will be large. The first two are very large. And they're going to range about $500,000 each. But some of them only going to cost $120,000. You could do that with 2 or 3 Tesla power walls. So that turnaround could be very quick. Solar Alternatives is local here. They bought Will Height Electric, if you remember, Will Height Solar. So we do have crews here ready to go. So it could be 2 to 3 month turnaround once funding is secured.
And what's the lifetime of the batteries that they're being charged through the solar panels?
So each institution agrees. So this is a big commitment of each church, right? That means their deacons are going to get out of bed at night to open it up. They commit to a 20-year service agreement with Community Lighthouse. And so that's a guarantee that all of that will be maintained for at least 20 years.
Well, I was referring to the actual batteries themselves. I'm not a...
So at least 20 years. I don't know. The larger ones are probably longer, but the Teslas we know at least 20 years. And we can get back to you with the actual stats off the box if you like.
Yeah, and I've asked our clerk to go ahead and get a PowerPoint, actually the copy of that for us to take a look at
We have
as well.
a short 2-minute video we can share as well.
Outstanding. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Is Bonnie Moore here? Is she in the audience? I didn't see her.
We have met with Mrs. Moore.
Ms. Moore, you mind coming up, please? And while she's coming up, my second question would be, if the city makes an initial investment, you said that would get us possibly first in line for the federal dollars that are used to create the same entity. Ms. Moore, will this project be something that we can possibly use community development dollars towards?
Certainly. I did meet with them and explain the process to them. It's certainly CDBG eligible. One thing I explained to them that with a disaster of any type, in order to be CDBG eligible, it must be declared by the President of the United States of America. But because they are creating the infrastructure for a disaster, we don't have to have that declaration. And so we could support them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Through the process.
Yes, ma'am.
It's all about that process.
Thank you. Pastor Mays, thank you all for coming. And
thank you.
If you'd give me a call and we can maybe possibly council members that want to talk further about it, then we can set that up. But thank you all, Pastor Smith, and thank you all, pastors, for coming and sharing that with us and giving us a whole new view and insight on what we can do for our community. Thank you all.
We appreciate your time.
Yes. Is Pastor Sean Cooper here? I didn't see him. All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor.
Sir? Is that all? My guess. I said my guess.
Okay, yeah.
If Mark Frazier can come on up. So I am pleased to announce that Blue Line Solutions and our administration, and with the help of council and of course the feedback from the communities, have reached some solutions on how we improve the program and how it will be ran going forward. Council has already been privileged to that information, so I've asked Mr. Mark here to come share what those agreements and changes and what we can look forward going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Mark Fraser. I'm a Field Operations Director for Blue Line Solutions. I first want to extend a sincere thanks to the chair and the council and the mayor's office for the opportunity to come and address some of the issues that are related to the Blue Line Solutions School Safety Program. Blue Line has the honor of working with partner communities around the country to work on school safety programs, and they have experienced overwhelming success in the form of reduced speeds and safer schools as a result of our programs. It's important to note that the sole purpose of this program is just that, to create safer schools for your students. Blue Line Solutions is run by a group of retired law enforcement officers. We boast nearly 200 years of law enforcement experience, and we have all worked speed-related traffic fatalities. One of the statistics that informs our company's mission statement is that an individual struck by a vehicle traveling 40 miles an hour has a 1 in 10 chance of survival, whereas an individual struck by a vehicle traveling 20 miles an hour has a 9 in 10 chance of survival. So while I am here to address some of the confusion over citations, please understand that the citations are merely a byproduct of our real product, which is creating safer schools for your students and teachers. For decades, Blue Line has been striving to eliminate speeders in school zones, and I believe it's important for me to address some of the steps that we undertake in order to implement a school safety program like this. We begin all of these programs with speed studies on each of the streets that has a school zone in it. These programs are data-driven, like any good law enforcement should be.
Speak a little bit into the mic, or they can turn it up for them. It's a little low.
Next, each of these enforcement areas is engineered to precise specifications to meet state and federal highway safety regulations. We spend months obtaining permits, both state and local, to ensure that everything that we install on your roadways meets their safety regulations. We purchase modern infrastructure and upgrade all of the signage so that it is new and clear and helpful. We then partner with a local construction company to install all of this equipment, injecting money directly into the Shreveport economy. We develop a very robust public information and education program so that we can get the message to the community that we are enforcing basic traffic laws in these school zones. When we do turn on an enforcement area, we spend the first 30 days issuing nothing but warnings so that no one is surprised by the fact that we are enforcing, like I said, basic traffic laws in these school zones. Then, once we begin enforcement, we even give a 10-mile-an-hour buffer. So if you receive a citation in a school zone, it's because you are really speeding in a school zone. Now, all of these actions are financed entirely by Blue Line Solutions. $0 from the Shreveport community coffers go into implementing these programs. And in the short period of time that we have been helping the Shreveport schools, we have had some unfortunate communications events which have caused some communications frustrations with your constituents. One of the most important parts of the program is the public education and information program. We create social media posts, TV, radio, and print campaigns. We will even do yard signs to make sure that people are aware of these enforcement areas. We will spare no expense in developing the public information campaigns for the city to use. Because the city enforcement actions or the citations come through the city, it is critical that they utilize this media that we make for them, and we hope to improve our capacity for this and leverage our working relationship with the mayor's office to ensure that we don't fail in this measure. Another challenge that we've had with this particular program is that when we build these these zones and replace all of the infrastructure. We've replaced all of the signage. We updated all of the time placards that indicate the start and stop times of these enforcement periods. Well, not long after we installed all of the new equipment, there was a change in the school times. So we incurred the expense of buying all new placards and getting those installed. And then after we finally got those installed, there was an additional change in the school start and stop times. So a third time Blue Line Solutions incurred a very expensive change to the signage in order to make sure that these school zones are properly marked. Now, as frustrating as that is for Blue Line Solutions, I can only imagine how frustrating it is for the citizens that are just trying to drop off their kids and get to work. Next, we started to receive some phone calls and social media posts from confused commuters because the flashing lights were on an hour before the school zones were active. They were completely out of sync with the placards. And I've got to highlight that Blue Line Solutions does not currently have any control over the flashers. That is within the city's purview. And we would like to work directly with the city to make sure that we can coordinate and sync those so that there is never a discrepancy between the flashers and the placards indicating the enforcement times, because our cameras are calibrated and accurate and programmed to work only during the time periods that are indicated on the placards. Now, Louisiana state law does not mandate flashing lights in school zones, but Blue Line Solutions completely agrees with the citizens that adding them would improve the school zones and help further reduce speed. So Blue Line Solutions had some internal meetings to try and figure out if there was a way for us to do this, and I'm happy to report that we have ordered flashers for all of the school zones that don't currently have them. So you have a private company based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee that is willing to spend nearly $500,000 on flashers in addition to the nearly $500,000 in infrastructure improvements that we've already made to modernize Shreveport's school infrastructure. We also completely agree with the citizens and the mayor's office that there need to be signs on side streets so commuters are aware that they may be entering a school zone from the middle. We do this for all of our communities in Georgia, and we look forward to being able to do it here. On top of all of this, Blue Line has agreed to open a satellite field office right here in Shreveport, where we can employ somebody from Shreveport to act as a customer service agent so that they can be there to answer any questions that may arise about the program or citations that get issued. It's worth noting that despite the challenges that Blue Line has faced in this early stages of this program, that we've still managed to generate an average of an 87% reduction in speeders in these school zones. So none of this is easy, but all of it is right. And Blue Line Solutions' goal is to do the right thing 100% of the time. We know there's been maybe a desire to put a pause on the program while things get worked out, but we would hate to see the gains that have been made in the reduction in speed lost during a hiatus. So again, none of this is easy, but all of it is right, and I thank you very much for the time.
So my question is really for the administration. I just wanted to make sure that the changes that he's just discussed is something that the administration is completely on board with, and that we do have an agreement in place for these changes. You mentioned, Mr. Mark, that a lot of these things were Blue Line is going to do. Was that mandated by the administration? Is it something y'all volunteer, or was this a collaboration based on all the concern? And I just want to make sure that both parties are on board with this new plan as we roll it out. Because council members can tell you, we're getting all the calls. So we want to make sure that the administration and Blue Line are both working together. We have a plan that we can execute. So when we get the calls, we can speak from our point of view that this is the right plan and we're behind it as well.
Absolutely. If I can jump in, these program problems have arisen kind of organically, and we have been working directly with the mayor's office to vet out solutions to them. And I think that we are developing a really wonderful working relationship. We understand that with a new administration, there is always a period of time where you're trying to straighten things out, and we hope that we are getting to a point where we can work directly with the mayor's office to alleviate any concerns or problems that have been plagued in the past.
We certainly appreciate your working directly with the mayor's office.
And one last question for me. We also have to vote on the $50 appeal. What is Blue Line's position on that $50 fee?
Thank you very much for bringing that up. The $50 fee that was in place to contest a citation was entirely a Shreveport City ordinance. Blue Line Solutions does not and has never charged a fee to contest a citation. That's just not anything we've ever done or had as a part of our policies.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I want to tell Blue Line thank you for working with me side by side in my community. I was one of the my area was one of the areas that had a whole lot of problems at Lakeshore Elementary, and they did work to get all of those tickets voided out for the constituents. I do appreciate that. I do look forward to a good working relationship once we get everything in order, because it is a good program. It's slowing people down, it's protecting the kids, and that's what it's there for. The constituents in my neighborhoods, they want the cameras. Even though they felt like it wasn't right the way the school zones were same all over, they did appreciate having the security, having the schools, the safety for their kids. So I think that my question as far as the other representative is, has the city taken care of our part of it? I asked this like 2 weeks ago. I mean, that way we'll know how we need to vote on this.
Ms. Bowman, we certainly think that we have. I'm surprised to see Blue Line here today, but we thought we had that all worked out, and and we don't have anything that's inconsistent with what he said.
Okay, because we keep saying it's the prior administration, but it's our baby now. We need to fix it. So do you feel like on your end that we have done everything that we're supposed to do as a city on our end?
Are you addressing me, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
There are challenges, absolutely, but we are here to work through any challenge that arises.
Okay.
We look forward to the very short future when this program is rolled out completely and all of the kinks are worked out, because once it is in place and once people are familiar with it, it becomes habitual for them. They drive the speed limit. We see a decreased number of speeders in these school zones. And like I mentioned, that is the primary objective of this program, is to create safe spaces around your schools.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with that. I know you were looking as far as like the lights were flashing at the wrong time, and I know it's the city's responsibility. Had that been corrected?
We're working diligently with the city to figure out the best solution for that. We do have some technology that we're prepared to install in the flashers to help us track when they are on. But we probably do need to work a little bit more with the city and the department that is in charge of the flashers to ensure that we coordinate with them directly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
Mr. Frazier? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. I had a prepared statement regarding the enforcement, so I'm going to jump around on my statement, and I want to ask you just a couple of questions. Are you a law enforcement officer?
I'm a former law enforcement officer.
Former, well, okay. And we are data-driven. I agree with that. I asked Blue Line a couple of council meetings ago to provide us with the number of vehicles that were stopped in each hour of a school zone, and I've yet to get that. This is all about data-driven, and so to make a determination on what times a school zone should be operative and the radar being run at that time, I think it's imperative that we know how many citations or pretty much how many citations are issued in the first hour or the second hour to make adjustments on those times, instead of having a blanket 7 to 9, 6 to 8, whatever you want to call it. And how many cities are you currently in?
I don't know the exact number, but it is several dozen.
Several dozen. And so in that several dozen, have you experienced the situation that you're currently undergoing now with us?
No, sir.
Why is that?
We have had maybe some better luck with our timing in the start of the program being more coinciding more with the administration's life cycle.
And when did since we, as Councilwoman Bowman said, that this is our issue now. So when did we first come on board? In other words, when did we turn the first camera, photo, whatever on?
Back in August.
Yeah, it was August of 2022.
August.
Sir.
And so between August and now, we're still working out the bugs.
That is correct.
Okay. So between August and now, wouldn't you say that we have some work to do?
We do have some work to do, yes, sir.
Okay, and wouldn't you also agree that if we do have, for a matter of just good practice, if we have work to do, should we not roll out a system or a process until all that is complete? Until we have a tight process?
That's a great statement. It's important to note that we don't roll out every school zone all at once. So each school zone presents its own challenges, and we roll them out in phases. So, and it kind of relates to the permitting process that I referred to earlier. We engineer each zone and then start permitting those zones. So as we get them permitted and as we get them up and running, we move to the next one. And we have had, not all of the zones have had the challenges that other zones have had. So I wouldn't say that the challenges that we experience are blanketed across the entire program evenly. There are some areas like Councilwoman Bowman's district that experience some problems, and we address them as they come up. So while I appreciate that idea and that sentiment, I'm not sure it applies directly to how we're doing things currently.
All right, fair enough. And I don't know if you sat in or if you witnessed any other council sessions. I'm not against the technology. I'm a former law enforcement officer, 34 years. So I get it, I've used it, I understand it, and so I want you to understand, first of all, appreciate your service, and that I'm not against the technology itself. My concern is, and I'll just speak for myself, I've been inundated with phone calls, emails, snail mail, sending me their copies of their citations, the photos, and so forth. My position is that, let me ask you a quick question. Who gives you the times that you're going to put on that speed camera signs? The enforcement times.
Great question. We base those off of the start time of the school and the end time of the school. And then there are parameters. Typically, they are set by the state of when these can be run, how many minutes before school starts and how many minutes after school starts that you can run the program. It is typically 2 hours. Most of the states that we work with have a 2-hour time frame at the beginning of the school day and at the end of the school day, because that's when you see the most traffic. You may have kids that are in after-school activities that are around for an hour or two after school ends. So the idea is to kind of bracket the school day with enforcement periods to encapsulate all of the high traffic area, time periods.
I understand that. So one of the biggest issues that I have, that my constituents have in the areas that I represent, is that, you know, safety of our children is paramount. I mean, that's really why you're here, right?
Correct.
Not revenue. It's safety.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if that's paramount, then we know that every mechanism and resource, from off-duty officers to crossing guards to the radar system, should be in place during those times when safety of our children is paramount. Agree?
I agree.
Okay. So the questions that we have, the issues that we have, is that if the school sets the school times and they know they're going to hire an officer or a crossing guard to protect our children before and after school, when the bell rings before, the tardy bell, and when the bell rings after, if they're going to hire law enforcement officers off duty and they're going to hire crossing guards to protect our children in a crosswalk, and those law enforcement officers and those crossing guards are dismissed within 20 to 30 minutes after school is let out, where's the hazard that we need to still enforce the school zones?
I honestly can't speak to each school's safety issues.
I'm just talking in general.
Sure.
Because every school, you said every school gets, you get the information from every school on their school times, and then you factor in a buffer with the state, and you're saying that that's a 2-hour window from a 7 to a 9 or whatever it may be. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. We use state guidelines too.
Okay, so I'm just saying, I'm just relaying that our issues is that 45 to an hour after school is let out, we're running radar. So it doesn't look like we're there protecting our children. It looks like we're generating revenue.
I can answer your question, Councilman. Okay. One of the reasons why this system came into place is because we don't have enough crossing guards. We didn't have enough to maintain the schools.
But I heard from Chief Smith saying that we did.
Well, we can call Chief Smith. He didn't say that, but you can call him up. That's not what he said.
Okay, so the reason that we're enforcing an hour after school is let out and there are no children and the teachers are dismissed 15 minutes, they're allowed to stay 15 minutes after the school bell rings. So we're continuing to enforce the school zones 45 minutes to an hour after. I just can't rationalize that, because you and I both know that when we have a gun in our hand, when we have a radar gun in our hand, we are there for a specific time, and we make the judgment on when there's a hazard, when there's not. My constituents are saying, look, 45 minutes and after, there's nobody on the school grounds. They go through schools all the time. They are frequent flyers through their school zones that they're getting multiple, I'm talking 5 and 6 tickets per family. I'm not saying that they didn't speed, I'm just saying that this is one of the issues that I continue to get my calls from, and maybe the rest of the city council members don't. But this is the issue with my school, my schools in my area, and I'm just here to get a better understanding, because I don't have an answer for them. And they continue to.
Councilman Talaferro, I think your issue is not with Blue Line. I think your issue was actually with the law.
No, my issue is with the process.
Well, what I mean by
the system is my issue.
You can appreciate the law is we've already had these school zone times in place. They've always had school zone times in place. That's not new. The only difference is the enforcement of the law. So I think the issue should be, should we change the law? Should we change the school zone? Because all Blue Line is doing is enforcing what we said the law is.
That's why I'm asking for clarification on who's telling who to enforce what.
So the administration is the only person that has changed the school zone time. That has not been at Blue Line's recommendation. That has been at the recommendation of the administration.
Councilman, I'm not blaming anybody here. I'm just trying to streamline the process because, again, I'm speaking for myself. They're not the ones getting these calls.
No.
Right.
No.
But I think the process should be, we should enforce the law. Whatever the
We
law
are
is,
enforcing the law.
we should hold people accountable to whatever the law is.
So it doesn't really, so we can put a 3 or 4 hour window in there as long as we're enforcing the law.
If that's the law, that's the law. Whether it's a camera or whether it's an on-duty officer that says you're speeding between these times and we say you can't go faster than 15 miles an hour because that's the law, then that's the law. They're simply doing what we're asking them to do, and that's enforce the law.
And I'm saying that maybe we're asking them to do what's not common sense. In other words, why am I asking them to enforce the law when the primary reason they're here is for the safety of our children? And if there's no issues with the safety of our children, 45 to an hour after school is let out. Because if there was a safety issue, our crossing guards would be there. The off-duty officer that's hired to provide extra traffic control would be there. I'm just saying you can't have it both ways. You can't remove the people aspect of it and then let the enforcement aspect of it to continue. And our citizens are popped for their $125 multiple times.
Councilman, I think
it's just a common sense thing for me.
Breaking the law, though.
I think what we're doing, instead of saying we're enforcing a law, I think what we're doing is saving a life. And Blue Line is saving the life of a child. We can't be like a Monday morning quarterback to say, after a child get killed, I know through my school zones, through Southwood, through Woodlawn and all those schools, they go through there like it's a racetrack. I've been there and I've watched them. So more than saying we're enforcing the law, whatever, we are actually saving a life. So what is it that we need to do to save the life of a child? As long as it's not our child, doesn't matter. But when it comes down to our children, then that's when we have an SOS situation. But right now, I don't think that I've driven through the school zone. I drive through there 10 miles an hour. Cars pass me doing 45 miles an hour. I say to myself, they gonna get a ticket and they gonna say that they were not speeding. So what does it take to save the life of our children? It's easy for us, as long as it's not happening over here, to say we don't need this. We just kill the whole deal. I need them in my area. I need them to save a life of a child. Not only my area, but we need to save the life of the children before we be Monday morning quarterbacks. So that's basically, and of course, what we can do is have a member of Blue Line to come to discuss whatever you want on the sidebar and talk about it. But this gentleman just came today to present what he has presented to the administration and what the conclusion that we've come to. So I think it's unfair to him to go over him and keep going over him. I think it's very unfair. It's good for TV, but I think it's unfair.
All right. This is not a TV moment. The point is that he is a representative, and I've already thanked him for his service. There's no disrespect here, and anybody that reads that into it is wrong. My point is that we are doing business with this entity. And oftentimes, people watching in, this is the only opportunity they have had to actually vet this system that they keep getting caught in. And I, as the representative of those constituents who elected me, I believe it's my duty to be their voice. And that's what I'm doing. I've always said, I'm not against the technology. I've used the technology. I understand the technology. My concern has always been is that how can you have it both ways in some of these school zones that I have, is that the radar continues to run and school is emptied out. And it's not just 5 or 10 minutes. It's 35, 45, almost an hour in some areas. That just doesn't seem to be common sense to me, and it doesn't seem to be fair. And the safety of our kids is not, it is in question. I mean, it is paramount, as we've all discussed and agreed upon. This is just ensuring that the system, works. That's all.
Councilman, let me ask you a question. During your process of being a law enforcement officer, did you ever do radar?
Absolutely.
Why?
Why?
Yes, sir.
Well, to enforce speed limits.
Why?
For safety.
For who?
For everyone.
So you did radar. Did you ever have an individual say, did you ever park in a place where whoever was driving couldn't see you?
Absolutely.
Why?
Name of the game.
So therefore, some of these people possibly here, you hid out to catch them on radar to give them a ticket. Was that
To enforce
fair?
the law, not to give them a ticket. Don't misunderstand. We are enforcing the law. Oftentimes, we did not give a ticket. That is the officer's discretion. There is no discretion here. You get the ticket.
Right, because they are open. It's open. It's open. You were hiding behind somewhere, waiting for somebody possibly on their way to work or late to pick up their children from school, and you had your radar gun, and you didn't give them a break.
You don't know that.
Well,
you weren't there.
If you gave them a break, you broke the law.
Officer's discretion, my
Chairman.
friend, and we're
Mr.
not
Chairman.
getting into that.
Okay.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman, just a couple of questions. I think we're kind of getting
Well,
bogged
hold on.
down.
Let me answer these. Hold on, let him finish.
Yes, sir.
That's all right. No.
You finish?
No, I'm gonna yield to Councilman.
Let him finish.
That's fine. Go ahead, Councilman.
Let him finish.
Can we be quiet in the chamber?
Could we just have some quietness in the chamber, please? Go
As-
ahead and finish, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if we're just, maybe it's me and maybe I'm the thick-skulled one here. But all it matters to me is, one, that we have a process, we have a system, and what matters to our constituents is the system works. The radar does work. What we're looking at is that could we do it better? And what I'm concerned about is that when penalties continue to be imposed, while a system that we've had since August is still being tweaked, and our constituents, some of them are just paying the fine just to make it go away. It just seems to me that I don't like the words I'm seeing out there in the public, like scam, being fleeced, money grab. We know that that's not it, but we know that we deserve to have a tightened process and a tightened system. That's all I'm looking for.
Councilman
Thank
Taylor,
you,
the agreed upon changes that we've got in our email, are you in support of all those changes? Do you feel like that would be enough? The flashers, the change in the school zone times to where it's customized for elementary, middle school, and now high school, will that solve the complaints that you're getting from your district?
I think everything that we can do in association with this, I'm not against the system. I'm just the technology again. I just want the system to be tightened up. And if we can, if you come to Uri Drive Middle School and you watch Uri Drive Middle School and you see when the kids get there and when the officer leaves and when the crossing guards leave, and then you adjust your time to, you can run 20 minutes after, I don't know. And then you stay after school and you do the same thing. When the final bell rings, you watch the teachers leave in 15, 20 minutes. The crossing guards are gone in 20 minutes. The officer's gone in 20 minutes. And then give it another 10 or 15 minutes, doesn't matter to me. But the point is
that wasn't the question. The question was the.
Well, you asked for the specific, get with the specific schools.
So times have already been proposed by the administration to Blue Line. That's going to go into
Right.
effect right at the spring
And that's
break.
the 2-hour window.
No. So they're customized times now. So if you looked at the email, elementary school will have one time, middle school will have
I
one time,
understand.
and high school. Does that fit the need of your district?
Well, no, because I'm not for enforcing just because we have a 2-hour window, and it's just common sense to me, is that if school is out, there's no danger, and if safety is the issue, then, and there's no danger, then why have the enforcement?
I think
That's
that-
my only point.
Yeah, I
Sir,
think
you
that
may
we-
have.
And so I'm
Well, I've got
finished
a
here.
question
Oh,
actually for him, if that's okay.
Okay.
I think we're kind of bogging down here, and I agree with you, Chairman. This probably should be done outside. I just have a couple questions that I would like to ask. First off, I was one of the ones that was involved when y'all first came and spoke with us. I think Councilwoman Taylor and myself, and maybe a couple of the other council members were there. We had 2 public safety committee meetings. It was approached to us, and this is the honest truth, that this was a way to generate revenue for the police department. That came straight from the former police chief to my ears, okay? I'm not opposed. I'm all for safety. I also said in the meetings where we're talking about the crossing guards, we did have a lack of crossing guards, and there was a expenditure to crossing guards. I think, and this is my opinion, I think the city drastically dropped the ball, and now Blue Lines is holding this hot ball mess that was created by the city. Now, y'all have some responsibility, because obviously somebody wasn't working with somebody, because I've seen a sign on Uri Drive that says school zone till 4 o'clock, and then on the other side of the school it says 4:30. I mean, it's a mess. So people don't understand what's going on, and unfortunately y'all have been thrown into a mess that really is not of your creating. My question was, whenever we talked to Mr. Hutchinson when we first started this, I said, how many cities, municipalities, you say there's 24 now roughly, how many have gotten out of the contract, who have left? Because we had a large discussion about the contract in the Public Safety Committee meeting over at the police station when we had it. How many have gotten out of the contract? And that, you don't have to answer that, and you can send me an email if you'd like to. But I would like to know in the last 2 years, how many people that have contracted with Blue Line Solutions have decided it didn't work and they pulled out, paid the penalty, and moved on. That's number one. Number two, I agree with Councilman Talaferro to a certain extent that I believe that a moratorium is not a bad idea until we get all this together. I think that what's happened, unfortunately, like I've said over and over again, now we've got this level of distrust from the public, and I don't know if it's ever going to be able to be fixed. They don't trust us. They think it's like what Councilman Talaferro said, a scam, or this or that. I'm not for kicking it out down the road or kicking it out, but I want us to be able, before we start issuing tickets, to make sure that there's not 4 o'clock on one side, 4:30 on the other side, entering into cross streets. You know, why didn't we think about that before? That's happened to me. It happened to me today. You pull out on and you go, oh gosh, I'm in the middle of school zone. Thank God it's spring break. But, you know, there's a lot of these tickets that are being issued that are not just people barreling through a school zone. I mean, it's just not. A lot of it is just mistakes that people make. Maybe it's wrong signage, maybe it's wrong times, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I had a call today from somebody that's in law enforcement, and they said, look, what can we do? My wife was driving this, there were no lights flashing, and it actually was on a school holiday. And I said, appeal it. I had a call from a guy, you know, that's a businessman here in Shreveport, generates a lot of tax dollars for the city. He called me the other day and he said, look, this was during this was during Christmas break. I get a ticket. I'm going to have to go up here and spend all morning appealing a $120 ticket. And he said, that takes away from my business and generating revenue. So there are some major issues. I appreciate, though, the concerns of Councilman Talaferro, but I also appreciate the concerns of Blue Line trying to make the thing work. But I would like to have the answer of how many people have just said, I'm sorry, this just isn't working for us. Because I can tell you, the majority of my constituents are saying that. I don't think it's your fault. I really don't. Honestly, Blue Line's, everybody that's related to Blue Line sitting out in the audience, look, I don't think it's Blue Line's fault. I think it was that the ball was dropped by the administration, and now, like Councilwoman Bowman said, we're here holding this ball a mess. If I weren't in a mixed group, I'd say something else. But we're here holding this ball a mess, Now we got to make the best out of this mess. And, you know, the mayor's office referring them to us, we're getting call after call after call, us referring it to the mayor's office. We're just making people mad, pinging them off of each other. So we need to, if a moratorium's what it takes, 2 weeks for no issuance of tickets to get all this mess fixed. And I think you're on the right track, Councilman Jackson. Thank you for pushing for that. But I'm still getting complaints. So I would like to know that about the contract. I'm not saying I want out of it, but I would like to know, it's all about data driven. How many times has Blue Line's contract been breached by a city because of issues like this? Because you said we don't have any issues right now with who you've got, but how many issues have we had in the past? And that kind of helps me drive my decisions a little bit better. So, but again, I don't think that it's Blue Line. I think that the city dropped the ball. You have a little bit of responsibility in that for pushing the city to do certain things, but I don't think it's all on y'all's back. So I appreciate you coming up here, taking the bullets. I appreciate Blue Line taking all of the criticism, and I've been fairly critical, but I'm critical of the system, not Blue Line. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman. And if I may, I'll try and provide a brief answer to that. To my knowledge, there have been 0 breaches of contract.
Okay.
But I will confirm that and get that in writing to you. I completely understand the distrust issue, and we want to do everything we can to resolve that with your constituents and all the way across the board. I completely understand Councilman Talafero's arguments, and the only counter argument I would make, sir, is that these school zones are typically less than 1,000 yards long, and it's not too difficult to slow down in those school zones. The bracketed time zones at the beginning and end of the school period are pretty much state regulated, and we just build these based on regulations that we get from states that we work in and common practices. It's not an effort to penalize people that live around the school zones in any way, shape, or form. You and I both know that there are not always after-school activities at school, but sometimes there are, and this is a situation where we try and catch all of the bad actors during those opportunities. So I think everyone has expressed valid points, and I just need to make sure that Blue Line is here to work with the City Council and the Mayor's office and the community to address these issues so that we can get this program as a part of the infrastructure of the city.
Mr. Frazier, thank you for all this you've done. I don't feel like it's right that we penalize your company for things that the city did wrong. Previous administration and then the new administration. You provide a service to us, and you've done exactly what you said you were going to do. We need more cameras. Shreveport is a mess right now. We have crime every day. In my community where I live, and the people I represent is black and brown people that are crying out for more cameras in their area. I mean, a lot of people get hit on Lakeshore Drive, and all of the tickets that I receive, if we just take the school zone out of the equation, in a 40-mile residential neighborhood, they were driving 55 and 60. And they'll say, I haven't got a ticket in 20 years. I say, I haven't either, but it don't mean I wasn't speeding. We don't have the law enforcement to enforce it. The police department needs help. We all were speeding. I got 2 tickets, and I was driving over the required speed limit. So now it's about accountability. If we want a better city, we gotta do business better, and we gotta protect our citizens. We're here to legislate and do the right thing. Just because our friend call and say, oh, I got a ticket, yes, ma'am, you did. You need to pay it and slow down in the school zones. If you're shooting people up, be aware. Cameras will be out there watching you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Mr. Frazier, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you have any other communications related to city business?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have Ms. Bonnie Moore come up. She'll have, I think she's going to introduce her presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Urban 3 was engaged about a year ago to do a fiscal impact analysis for the city of Shreveport. We've been engaged over the last couple of days with several meetings related to this. They specialized in land use economics, public expenditures, property tax analysis, and community design. I'm going to ask both former Councilwoman Fuller and Joe Menincasa to come up and explain the fiscal impact analysis for us. Thank you.
Council members, it's nice to see you from this angle. Thank you so much for your time today. I would just give like a blanket introduction of Mr. Menincasa from his website, quick paragraph explaining his credentials and why he does what he does. But instead, I want to tell you that in 2017, my group, Reform Shreveport, brought Mr. Menincasa in with some funding from the DDA, DSDC, and a few other groups to discuss what his findings have been for other cities. And ever since he came in with those findings, we wanted to see this analysis for Shreveport. Now, I was hesitant to say this, but the longer I've sat here and mulled this over, the more I feel like I should. We got to see the preliminary findings a couple of weeks ago on a Zoom. And during that Zoom, a member of the administration that was kind of there to watch the Zoom and see these findings asked me how I thought that the members of this council that represent the areas west of I-49 would react to this information, thinking that you might see it in a negative light. But my response and Ms. Moore's response, not to throw her under the bus, was that you might actually feel very validated when you see what these findings say about the trajectory that this community has been on for a very long time as far as our development patterns, and you might actually see this as a validating thing for things that we have been saying about our development pattern and our disinvestment in certain communities for a very long time. There's so much more to this information than that, but I'm just very thankful that we had the opportunity, and I hope that you all find this to be a valuable tool. Thank you.
I'm going to try to stand on the red line here. So thank you all for hiring us to take a look at this analysis and look at your data. We've had a number of presentations, about 5 a day now, since the last 2 days. It's videotaped last night, so I'm going to give you maybe the brief version of this show. I am from Asheville. I don't know if you all have been to Asheville, but Asheville suffered a similar decline that Shreveport is going through. We fell flat on our face in the Depression. These are shots of downtown Asheville from the 90s. It just boarded up. I worked for a downtown real estate investor in Asheville. One of the things that we found was a kind of an attitude in town that we're not worthy, our downtown will never come back, don't even try. But we did. So we focused on rebuilding buildings. This is Julian Price. This is a for-profit company that we had to do buildings and fix them up. But really what we're trying to do when we talk to folks in town is try to get them to understand why our work means something to you or at City Council. If you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says to constitute a city or a company or other organization as a legal corporation. By law, this is the board of directors for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, right? That's what you all are. The parish is incorporated, your state's incorporated, our country's incorporated. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert Show. The United States is the largest corporation in the world. You all have to balance books. You have to deal with paying for things and looking at revenue. So a really simple way of looking at this is to look at land as a product. This is one of our buildings that we rehab. Ground floor retail, second floor office, upper stories residential. The city did a streetscape project. Actually, our city councilors got chastised for investing in downtown with these really expensive projects for downtown developers. And we used to get criticized as well, and we'd say, okay, well, fine, that's $30,000 worth of equipment for the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a tree. We took the taxable value from $300,000 to $11 million, which represents 3,500% increase in taxes. So y'all get 3,500% more taxes to do what? Whatever you want. How do you build your community's wealth? And this is good for everybody. Do you have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? Isn't that awesome? And again, there'd be people with biases. They're like, well, Joe, that's interesting and everything, but this Walmart's $20 million, double the value of your building. But realize it took 34 acres of my community to make that Walmart happen versus 0.2 acres of our building. When you look at the overall number, of gross value, you're misinterpreting how it affects your land, and your land is all that you have, particularly if you're the parish. The parish can't annex the next county over. So per acre, we're producing 100 times more taxes per acre in property taxes, double the retail sales, a lot more residents, obviously, and more jobs. This is the basic thesis of how we look at cities, is making things apples to apples so you can tell, think of miles per gallon versus miles per tank, right? You can tell the efficiency of your cars that way. Incidentally, sometimes people think that we're just bashing Walmart. I'm not. In fact, I presented at an assessors conference, and the head of Walmart got up and presented this amazing presentation on how cheap Walmarts are. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? He knows that if he goes in and gets the assessors to lower his value, he pays less taxes. But in your community, is that something that you want? So I actually asked Mr. Terrell, I said, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he goes, 15, 20 years. We designed the building to depreciate it. We don't care about the long-term effect of it. That's fine. Again, that's his game. What's your game? Do you want a 15-year investment? That's the life cycle of a cat. I'm a dog person. This is a joke. I'm just letting you know. You see this as you look down Uri all the way down. You see the cannibalization of retail, where they just keep on moving and they leave behind these husks of strip malls. That's the way that product works. It's not their fault. They're just following an economic model. But it's your corporation. By the way, y'all are worth $15 billion of taxable value. So you're the chair. You're the board of a $15 billion corporation. I would argue that people don't see that because a lot of it is how it's presented. So when I talk to folks about presenting information, if I can show you a CAT scan of your brain, right? I can show you your brainstem activity in blue versus your creative thought process in green. Can we do an economic MRI of your place? In my community, this is my county, and just to get familiar with the color chart, gray is non-taxable. So these are two big forests, Pisgah and Mount Mitchell. Non-taxable, they don't pay me taxes. Green, I've got low value, purple is high value, green is low value over here. You see this big purple splotch right there? That's the Biltmore estate. That's America's largest house. That one property is worth $100 million. That's pretty cool. But it's a 180,000 square foot house. Who's got a 180,000 square foot house? One person. So of course it's going to be valuable. It's a big thing, but per acre, here's the map per acre, that shifts. I'll just show it to you in 3D. So now we can see the landscape of revenue coming out of our community. If we're to lay our taxes, everybody's paying the same taxes across the model. Lay it on there like a blanket, where's everybody getting their money? So when we communicate in our county, I have folks that live out in the county, 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter in the city. Our politics are completely different than what y'all have here. So we have to explain to them where the money's coming from is out of our downtown. So for y'all, we made a bunch of pie charts and graphs. Basically, whenever we look at a budget, it's really painful to look at budgets. I'm sure you all have to mash them through your brain. But basically, here's your revenues at $200 million. Your expenses are greater than your revenues right now. There's a lot of detail to this, but basically what we want to focus on is the big ticket items, your sales and your property taxes, which is about 75% of your money. And then we made this other chart, which is called a Sankey chart, which is showing the flow of the money from your revenue side to the expenditure side. So this is what we're mapping, putting on a map. You wouldn't live in an area if there weren't a street and a pipe getting out to that property, right? So that's how you invest that infrastructure. Do you get a return? This is the parish right here, and what you see is the total value, or think miles per tank. When we say value per acre, it shifts, and all of a sudden you can see Shreveport popping up, and here it is in 3D. So parish-wide, y'all are paying the same parish taxes across this model. You can see where the parish has drawn all of its money in Shreveport. This is focusing in on the city now and zooming in. We highlighted a couple of the more productive properties, the spikes, if you will. You get the downtown mountain popping up. There's some stuff over by the lake that you can see it popping up, but that's all lakefront real estate. Once you get a parcel off that, it just drops down, which is pretty typical for lakefront real estate. And Providence actually does all right down at the bottom. So this is the revenue side. Here's your downtown, and kind of zooming in to take a, slowing down for a second. A couple of things we also gave you is a map of taxable, non-taxable. Your parish is about 12% non-taxable. Your city is about 33% non-taxable. There's no magic number here. You have a university and an airport. Those are going to be non-taxables. 33% is about average for a county seat with a university. Where you're a little bit funky is when you get into your downtown. you're over 50% non-taxable. This is not good. Now, granted, this would take some teasing out because you have some considerable properties like the VA and the Veterans Park that are way down the list on being downtown. Whether or not those should be part of downtown, I don't know. But this is your fertile soil. You just want to pay attention to what you take off the tax rolls. A couple of numbers to pay attention to. You take up about 8% of the footprint of the parish. You're producing about 74% of the parish's property taxes. So as a shareholder of the parish, as in the corporation, you're a 1-to-9 ratio of what you take up in land to what you punch into the pocketbook. That's pretty good. Your downtown as a shareholder of your city is 0.7% of your city. It's 3% of the property taxes. That's a 1-to-5 ratio of productivity. That's a little on the low side. And y'all kind of know that. You know that you're working on your downtown. You generally want that to be about a 1-to-6. Now, let's not forget that your downtown is a shareholder of the parish, right? So I don't even know what you call that, a 1/600th of a percent versus 2%. So that's a 1-to-40 ratio of productivity. So as you build up your downtown, what's awesome about this is what's good for the downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the parish because the parish gets a lot of revenue out of it. But from a service standpoint, there's no kids in the downtown going to school. But again, start that conversation, have that conversation with the parish about working together going forward. Really quickly, I'm just going to go through some basic building types. The Walmart's about $500,000 an acre. When you get into single family, it drops down a little bit below that at $400,000 an acre. Multifamily is a little bit more at $425,000. And I would just ask that you split this baby up a little bit and take a look at it because not all multifamily is the same. You're going to get some big buildings, but just taking a look at these little guys here, little duplexes, townhouses, these are pulling $1.2 million an acre, or 3 times the productivity of single family detached. So that's just the reality of the data of what you got going on. By comparison, you could look at something like Mall St. Vincent at $300,000, or the Piermont Mall at about $400,000, let's say. And really what that is, it's the parking that liquidates all that value and waters it down. Also, it's basically a cheap box. There's not much to the architecture there. Different kind of commercial. You can see the Family Dollar there is $1.3 million. I've been making fun of this poor little box right here in downtown, but it's pulling $7 million an acre. It's not anything architecturally impressive. It's just a box. And then this new bank out at Providence is pulling about $8 million an acre. And again, your history, these old buildings pulling, these are all roughly around $2 million an acre. You're going to see some of them drop down in productivity because some of them may have either historic status or some kind of tax break. And then your big buildings, of course, are very impressive at $9 to $15 million an acre. But I just want to dwell on this point of history for a second, that these buildings have been around for 100 years producing this wealth for you. They're not built on a timeline of 15 years. So the attitude of your great-grandparents were to build this permanency in this ongoing legacy that could be recycled in value. So it's a very important architectural lesson there. So that little box right there, that's its footprint compared to the Mall St. Vincent and how much land it takes up in your portfolio. If you had that many of that building on the left, it would equal all of the mall in property value. So that's just a lesson in land consumption. As you know, sales taxes are important, so let's go to that and measure that real quick. Here's your sales tax productivity. So even though there's not as big a ticket item that happens in downtown, like you go out and buy a car or something like that, it's all those little transactions that add up in the downtown that make it very potent for what it is. So as you grow your downtown up, it's going to keep on adding value to that, the more stores you add to the downtown. Additionally, if you look to the south side, you can see the string of commercial on down to the mall, and all of that commercial is very potent, but it's sitting on a property tax that's not all that productive. So this is your property tax model, and then we'll lay onto it the icing of your sales tax model so you can see your full revenue. So this is basically how it works. Zooming into your downtown, you can see its productivity of property tax with retail tax stacked on top of it. And again, to be fair, out there at Anderson Island and also down here at Spring Lake, you're seeing a lot of sales taxes, but it's sitting on a very thin property tax base. And that's the reality of that land use typology. You have infrastructure. If I'm a developer and I build you a road and give it to you, I don't give you an asset. I give you a liability. So for the life of that road, which is forever, you're going to be stuck maintaining it on an annual basis. You also have to fix it every 10 years. Every 10 years you do a rehab, a resurfacing, and after about 4 cycles you do a major reconstruction. So when we look at your numbers as a $15 billion corporation, that's your revenue. What are you carrying in cost, and what should you have a reserve account for all the stuff that you own? So if I own a building that's got an air conditioner on top of it, I know that air conditioner is going to, like this building here is an air conditioner that's probably going to be about $100,000 to fix every 20 years. So I have to squirrel away rent to buy that new air conditioner 20 years from now. That's how it works. So then the life cycle starts all over again. So looking at your systems, and again, I'm flying through a lot of information, but these are your water, your sewer, your drainage, and your roads. If it weren't for you investing in that infrastructure, I wouldn't have the ability to enjoy my real estate to put a house on it, right? So there's a promise that you put that infrastructure out to me, I give you taxes and revenue to pay for it. That's the exchange in the corporation. So here's the money that you're currently spending in your water system. And I'm going through these numbers. This isn't to shame you all. Every city we work with has a similar problem because of the habits that we've built in our financial administration of our cities. So there's a shortfall in your water because we typically don't look at life cycle this way. This is your sewer. There's a little bit of shortfall there. This is your storm systems, your drainage, basically. A smaller shortfall there. And then your roads is where you have the big deficit. We typically don't treat roads like a utility, and we should. It's that simple. There's a pipe, we treat the pipes that same way. We fall into this habit of taking roads without thinking of the full costs once we get them, and we don't feel the impact because we generally don't have to do much to them when they're brand new. So here are the numbers of what you've got in your system of needed spending versus what you're putting in. And so let's just stack this up. So here's what you're spending, and you're spending a lot, but here's what you need to spend. So what we're seeing right now is a deficit of close to $94 million. Is just as think of this as a stress test of what's missing in the pocketbook. You're either going to fill this gap one way or another. You're going to get a bond, which is going out and renting money from somebody, or you're going to have to cut services somewhere to find the money to pay for this stuff. But you own the money. Just to put it in context, that's about 10 Regents Banks worth of deficit, or if you wanted to get the taxes off that, it would be about 425 buildings. So this is a joke. Roads are forever. They actually last longer than diamonds in some marriages. But you all have enough roads to go from Shreveport to Buffalo in what you own. So think of it this way. Every 50 years you have to build another road to Buffalo. Would you have made that choice 100 years ago if somebody told you to do it? And so this isn't to shame your predecessors, just we all got in this habit of growing without understanding it. And to show you your peer groups, we did a project in Bentonville and also Lafayette. Bentonville has more roads per person than y'all do, but when you look at what they're spending as a ratio of their roads, they're about 70% of spending. They've got a bigger reserve account. You're doing worse than the sample. So y'all need to think about that and think about the spending. A really quick analysis is how did you grow? So this is your community before World War I. And then like a lot of American cities, you started growing out. You basically added 100,000 people, but you quintupled your land area. And then you grew again, but you all know the history here. In 2008 is pretty much where your population froze, and then you dropped and kind of flatlined, yet you're still annexed land. You're adding more infrastructure and costs and less people. And that's going to be something you have to deal with. So the model, this is the cost spread across the model, is what you're paying for stuff or what you should be paying. This is looking at it in the side view as if you're like looking at a boat hovering in water, but like flip it upside down for sunk costs, right? So that's the sunk cost. Here's your revenue. When you net your revenue against your expenses, you see what's in the black and what's in the red citywide, and basically this is what you got. So Providence actually does all right. It's just the stuff around Providence where it starts to essentially be upside down financially. The stuff between Providence and some areas of the LSU area is where there's a deficit. So the patterns matter. I also want to talk about this is a very important point for your community. When you put infrastructure into a community, so these are three parcels that are 50 foot wide apiece. They all have the same pipes, right? Each of them has 50 foot of pipe, 50 foot of roads, etc. When you look at the revenue streams, that one in the middle has two houses on 50 foot, so you're getting two revenue streams. The one on the far right, you get one revenue stream. The one on the far left, you get very little. Taxing a vacant parcel doesn't give you the money to pay for those pipes that you've invested into it. So I would just strongly recommend don't take more houses down until you know what you can do with them. But also take a look at the patterns that are happening and ask the questions why. Why did this happen? Looking at your community, these are all the vacant parcels in your community. You have 17% or 9,000 acres of land is serviced without a building on it. This is not good. You also, drilling into this, you have adjudicated properties of 1,400 acres. These are controversial, and they should be. This is a deeper question to ask why and how did this start. And a lot of that starts with redlining. 1934, we changed policies on how and who could get a mortgage. We changed mortgages from 7 years to 30 years. There were, you're not alone, there are maps issued all across the country. You had to list 4 different classes of real estate: best, desirable, declining, and hazardous. Hazardous was 2 classes of people. If you were an immigrant, and in the 1930s it was Italians, so watch out for me, I could take your real estate value down. Italians were classified in most cities. On the West Coast it was Asians, further south you go was Mexicans, but also hazardous were if you were black. Now I could change my name to Smith. If you're black, you can't change your skin. So this is how it's pernicious. You wake up, you can't sell your real estate in those districts. So when you look at your red line map, here's a red line map. That actually is the text straight from the federal documents. That was 80% Negro, 20% white. So right out the door, the families in that neighborhood can't sell that real estate. That went on from 1934 to 1968. So as you look at neighborhoods and you ask yourself, well, how did this happen? A lot of this is an attrition of time and people being disconnected from the economic system. I'm dwelling on this point because when you look at the average values per acre in the color categories today, you still see the same patterns written across your model. So if you're in one of the neighborhoods that was green, you're still at $500,000 of value, but look at how big of a haircut it takes down to blue, down to yellow, and over to red. So I would argue that to respect those folks in the neighborhoods that were hammered this way by policies that were adopted by your predecessors that were essentially race-based and racist, you have to put your energy behind repairing those neighborhoods first. So aligning the adjudicated properties and the red line, I would say take the red and the yellow areas and just say, what do we need to do to roll our sleeves up? How can we help? What are areas that we can do to help these families that have decided to suffer this burden going forward? So that's one of our recommendations. We did a couple of growth projections. It's basically taking the ingredients of your city, of different patterns, and what kind of cake would you make. So the ingredients are single-family housing, suburban commercial, townhouses, and Main Street type stuff. And we just basically ran 2 scenarios. And I'm just going to get to the cut to the chase on these and put them side by side. So one is dispersed and spread out, the typical suburban pattern, and one is you do some concentrated nodes of development. Basically, with the concentrated side, you can use less acreage. You can do it in half the acreage for the same amount of stuff. You'll get higher property taxes out of it and less cost on the infrastructure. And you're also going to get a higher value per acre out of it. So our recommendation is to focus on concentrated growth where you can get the biggest bang for your buck and lean into some density a little bit. So going out from here, you have all of these models now. Please use them. This whole presentation was videotaped last night, so you have that as well. I'd recommend concentrating development. Concentrated development is more productive for you. One is you get more bang for it on a lot less infrastructure. Your infrastructure isn't cheap. There's no way around this deficit. Even if we're wrong by 50%, $50 million is still nothing to ignore. You have a huge deficit. Costs will vary with how you build. The more you stretch out, the more expensive it gets, period. It's that kind of simple. Seek for efficiencies. As a joke, I was looking at the Parkway. Incidentally, I drove on this last night. I'd hate to admit this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it Don't give me a ticket. I tried to keep up with traffic, and somewhere around 70 miles an hour, I was like, maybe I should slow down. And I was being passed by people. But as I look at this is a very expensive road. So that you all own this. It's about $3.6 million worth of owning it. Just as a joke, we're like, what if you just turned half of it into park? You kept 2 lanes instead of having 4. We've just cut your cost into $1.8 million. So now you have $1.8 million you can put towards something else. I'm using this as a joke, but I want you to think of this as consider everything that you own and start to reconsider, is it worth it for Mardi Gras and for teenagers to have fun on this thing? Is it worth it for that expense? Your development patterns matter. Just let that be seared in your mind. And finally, prioritize repairing the past harms and the cost that it's costing you regardless right now. So if you don't deal with this, this is going to be continuing with you as a legacy. And that's my whole presentation. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely was amazing. I appreciate it for a couple of reasons. We all are elected for different reasons. We represent our district, but I'm an advocate of making sure that the people that have the power to make decisions for this city are well informed of what the challenges are, and not only what the challenges are or what the solutions are. So I definitely appreciate this presentation. It gives us a lot to think about, but it also gives us a clear roadmap as to what we need to do in order to get ourselves out of the current situation that we're in. So I appreciate that.
And thank you for having the faith in our work. Take care.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any other city business?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does any member have any questions for Mr. Harris on property standards? Anyone? Thank you, Mr. Harris. Everyone should have received your revenue collection plan and implementation report, finance report. Public hearings, there's none. Madam Clerk, is there any legislation to be added to that?
Yes, we have ordinance 29, the city report, Louisiana 2023 capital project conference.
Hey, do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak for this being added or against this being added? Seeing there's none, is there a motion to add number 29 to the agenda?
So move.
Moved by Councilman Jackson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Teleferro. Are there any questions or comments? Then if not, let's push the button. Mine's not working.
Councilman Green?
Yes, mine's not working. Yes.
Councilman Brooks?
Yes.
And Councilman Teleferro?
Yes.
That passes with a 5 and 2 out the chamber vote.
Thank you. Today we will have public comments on agenda items only, and you will have 3 minutes. I do have one, Mr. Charles. Of course, Amtrak and potholes are not on the agenda today. You'll just be able to speak on agenda items. At this particular time, I have Mr. Sammy Mears.
Sammy Mears, 1901 Centenary Boulevard, apartment M110, Shreveport, Louisiana 71101. Today I'm speaking on 9A31 and 9A38. 2 weeks ago, the speedlight cameras were postponed for 2 weeks to do more studying up on, and I could understand that. Hopefully something could be resolved today. I'd like to see that happen to get a vote yes. People who were here 2 weeks ago did complain about getting tickets, and they did not like that one bit. And there was one lady that did say that she was tired of finding it, and she was a retired lady. And just like Grayson Boucher did say 2 weeks ago, it's time to get the ducks in a row. That I remember, because I've been watching the replays. If this has been taken care of, which I hope it has, a yes vote today would be very sufficient and everyone will really appreciate it. On 9/8/38, even though I don't know Kerry Camp for the years that he's been giving contributions to the radio industry, I still think that that would be a good idea too. It would be a great idea. And we still have sensor cameras that we need in the Highland area because people still run the red lights and police are not around to see it, but I know that I've caught them at it on occasions, and this needs to end once and for all. I haven't been able to get in contact with anyone in the city engineering, but we do need help. If anyone could help us out with that, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. John Glover?
Good evening. John Glover, 9100 Walker Road, apartment 217, Shreveport 71118. I wanted to speak to resolution, is it resolution or ordinance? Let's see here. It is resolution number 42, and it deals with our insurance premiums. I went back to the 2023 operating budget for the city of Shreveport. I found nothing in there that signified the premiums that will be addressed, with understanding that everything needs to be addressed and considered because the payment is due April 1st, 2023. I'd just like to see the list of those assets, buildings, facilities, which I thought was the same, and then even the activities that probably more than likely can carry liability. I'd like to see those lists to see from year to year, what is it that we're really covering? In 2018, when Mayor Perkins first took office, he gave us a listing, the marine, inland, and whatever it dealt with, and the different aspects of the insurance. Hadn't seen that but one time. Again, when I went to the 2023 budget, there's nothing in there. And that budget is 428 pages. So there should be something that signifies individually what it is that those insurance premiums are going to address. If you all could be so kind as to make that available to me, even the public, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Clark McCollis, I believe.
Right here?
Yes, sir. I hope I didn't mess your last name.
McCollister, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I guess the gentleman from
State
Blue
your
Line
name.
is,
State
I'm
your
sorry,
name
yes,
and
sir.
address.
Clark
You have 3
McCollister. I live at
minutes.
4832 Dixie Garden Drive, which is in Caddo Parish.
Yes, sir.
But a Shreveport mailing address, and I'm here about the speed camera issues. The gentleman from Blue Line was very receptive, I think. One of the problems that I have seen, and I tried to address as soon as these speed cameras went online, and seemed to get a runaround from Blue Line and the city bouncing me to different people and talking to traffic and everybody else. Our school zones, Mr. Jim, if you remember, were at different times. And when Blue Line came in, they mandated the 2 to 4 and the 7 to 9. I understand that y'all are addressing that. That is wonderful, because Captain Shreve, of course, as you know, gets out at 3:55 and the lights quit flashing at 4, so that's not doing anything for Captain Shreve. One of the problems that I have, and I've received several citations, I have also went before a group here and got out of those tickets because of the homework that I have done for this. A lot of these speed zone areas do not have the proper signage required by the state. And even with that, that means that we are ripping off the people because we can't legally issue them tickets until that signage is in place. So I'm hoping that y'all will put a hiatus on this for the time being. I was hoping the Blue Line representative would take tomorrow, I would drive him around, go to every school zone, look at the signage, see what's going on in each spot. Because I went through a school zone today that did not have the proper signage, And 2 days ago, the lights weren't flashing at the school zone that I go through on Dixie Garden, which does not have posted times. School zone is in effect when lights are flashing. But I would be happy to help anybody here. Y'all are welcome to give me a call. I'll stay around. I'll visit with you. I am a general contractor in Shreveport. I'm a businessman, have been a resident here all my life. And I think the school zone cameras are a good thing. But they need to be done right and they need to be done legal. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Craig Lee.
Craig Lee, 1112 Prospect. In the late 1880s, my great-great-grandfather migrated from Wascom, Texas to the city of Shreveport, Giles D. Moore with my other uncle, Al Monty Moore, and they acquired over 1,000 acres of land in what is today Moore Town. In the late 1880s, when he acquired the property, it was known as Moore's Town. He had a vision of having a self-contained African-American community, homeowners, businesses for African-Americans, and a college, which Coleman College migrated in from Gibson, Louisiana to Mooretown. I stand in support, although I know it's not coming up until of the TIF district in Councilman Green's District F. That is very important. The presentation that the gentleman gave today, excellent. I was in the 1 o'clock session with him, but the question that I posed, and also Leon Wheeler, is about the economic aspect. You can have houses all day, but if economics is not a part of it, the individuals are not going to be able to maintain the homes. The issue in the city of Shreveport is that we have approximately 40% or more of our residents living at or below the poverty level. And so when I asked the question, Councilman Jackson, at what point in time does a person own a home in the United States? And they always say after you pay off your mortgage. But Councilman Teleferro, in America, you never own a home because you have to always pay taxes. And if you don't pay the taxes, you're going to find out quickly who actually owns the home. The other aspect of that is the maintenance of that. So I'm very pleased with the fact that Councilman Green is trying to do a tax incentive financing district in that area, because you got to have an economic component as it relates to revitalizing a particular area. My uncle would be very pleased of this, and I hope this will inspire other neighborhoods to use tax incentive financing as well. So I am full support of the TIF district in District F.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes speaking at this time. We have no executive appointments to be considered today. There are no items under our consent agenda to be introduced today or adopted. Madam Clerk, would you proceed with regular agenda legislation?
Resolution 166 of 2021. It was previously postponed until March 28, 2023.
Thank you.
Resolution 31, encouraging the Shreveport Police Department to place a temporary moratorium on the issuance of all citations pertaining to violations enforced by photographic speed.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve. Motion by Councilman Teleferro, second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
I think I got it.
That fails.
Resolution 32, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for parking system management with the Downtown Development Authority.
Moved by Councilman Jackson.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button. And that passes.
Resolution 33, authorizing the mayor to execute an act of release of utility servitudes in the Providence Phase 3 Unit A subdivision in Section 20, Township 16 North -R 13 West.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Jackson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Thank you.
Resolution 34, authorizing the mayor to execute an act of release of a portion of a utility servitude in the Providence Phase 3 Unit C subdivision in Section 20, Township 16 North, Range 13 West.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Jackson.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bowman and Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Resolution 35, celebrating the Sigma Rho Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha 30th Anniversary Annual Debutant Cotillion.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman.
Second.
Second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Resolution 36, proclaiming March 2023 as Women's History Month in the city of Shreveport.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman.
Second.
Second by Councilman Talaferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Resolution 37, proclaiming March 16, 2023 as Retired Teachers Day in the city of Shreveport.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman.
Second.
Second by Councilman Brooks and Talaferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
Councilman Jackson.
Yay.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Resolution 38, honoring Carrie D. Camp for his many years of contribution to the radio industry.
Moved by the chair.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bowman and Talaferro. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
Councilman Talaferro.
Thank you.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Resolution 39, honoring Bishop Sean D. Cooper, Sr.
Moved by the chair.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, let's push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you proceed with introduction of resolutions not to be adopted prior to March 28, 2023?
Mr. Chair, before we proceed with the introduction of resolution, the first resolution on the agenda to be introduced does have an amendment that pertains to the title. If it's the pleasure of the council, the amendment needs to be adopted before we introduce the resolution as amended.
You said the first one?
Yes, Resolution 40.
All right.
The amendment pertains to a change. There was an error in the title that needs to
So
be.
moved as amended.
Motion on the amendment by
Second.
Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bowman that this amendment be introduced. Are there any questions or comments concerning this amendment? If not, would you push the button on the amendment?
And now we can proceed with introduction once it's adopted.
Introduce Resolution 40 as just amended. Resolution 41, authorizing the mayor to execute a CA of other documents associated with a grant from the state of Louisiana for water sector program funds. Resolution 42, giving city council approval for the mayor to pay the premiums and execute documents in connection with the purchase of insurance for the city buildings, facilities, and activities for the period beginning April 1st, 2023. Resolution 43, authorizing a request to be made to the Louisiana Department of Natural Resources, Louisiana State Mineral and Energy Board to seek public bids for an oil, gas, and mineral lease involving the property located in District A and described herein, and to execute the lease for certain mineral interests owned by the city of Shreveport.
Thank you. Is there a motion to introduce these?
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman.
Second.
Second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, these items have been introduced. Madam Clerk, would you proceed with introduction of ordinance not to be adopted prior to March 28, 2023?
Yes. Ordinance 22, amending the 2023 Community Development Special Revenue Fund budget. Ordinance 23, amending the 2023 General Fund budget. Ordinance 24, amending the 2023 budget for the MPC Special Revenue Fund. Ordinance 25, amending the 2023 budget for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Ordinance 26, amending the 2023 budget funding contractual service provided for the Sportran by Metro Management Servicing. Ordinance 27, closing and abandoning a portion of the old Florinor Lucas Road dedication in Section 8, Township 16 North, Range 13 West. Ordinance 28, an ordinance to amend the MPC's fee schedule for the city of Shreveport, Louisiana, UDC relative to adding fees for extensions requests to wireless telecommunication facility modification applications. Ordinance 29, amending the 2023 capital projects fund budget.
Is there a motion to introduce these items?
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman.
Second.
Second by Councilman Telefair. Are there any questions or comments on any of these items? If not, these items have been introduced. Madam Clerk, would you proceed with ordinance on second reading and final passage?
Ordinance 18, amending the 2023 general fund budget.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman, second by the chair. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Ordinance 19, amending the City of Shreveport, Louisiana 2023 capital fund budget.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Jackson.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Ordinance 20, amending the City of Shreveport, Louisiana 2023 capital projects fund budget.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Bowman.
Second.
Second by Councilman Brooks. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Ordinance 21, amending section 20-519 of the Code of Ordinance relative to administrative adjudication hearings for the school zone speed violations and otherwise providing with respect thereto. There is one amendment. This amendment corrects an error in the cited subsection B, provision to add the phrase "and/or contracted traffic safety company." It now reads as, upon receipt of a request of cash bond within the prescribed time period within this paragraph, the office and/or contracted traffic safety company.
So move as amended.
Moved by Councilman Jackson on the amendment, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button. Mine went away. Yes.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Ordinance 14, zoning
As amended.
as amended.
Motion by Councilman Jackson as amended, second by Councilwoman Bowman. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Ordinance 14, zoning case number 22-215C, rezoning property located north side of Murphy Street, contained by Arkansas Avenue, Ashton Street, and Alabama Avenue, from R-1-5 Single Family Residential Zoning District to R-3 Multifamily Residential Zoning District.
Motion to withdraw this legislation.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bowman to withdraw this legislation. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
Motion to withdraw passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Thank you. Also, council members, I need a motion to adopt a recommendation made by the city attorney in the two lawsuits that were on the agenda that we had to discuss in the executive session on yesterday.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman
Second.
Bowman,
Second.
second by, sir,
Yeah. Yes.
Councilman Jackson, second by Councilman Jackson. Are there any questions or comments? If not, push the button.
That passes with a 5-2 out of the chamber vote.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any legislation to be removed from the table? We have no property standards or ABO appeals to consider today. We have no MPC or ZBA appeals to consider today. Are there any other appeals, Madam Clerk? Are there any reports from officers, boards, and committees? Madam Clerk, is there a clerk's report?
The following letter of appointment was received from the mayor's office on March 13, 2023, and is subject for confirmation March 28, 2023. It's for Edward Jones for Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you have any other communication?
I have none other, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any council member have any other additional communication?
No, sir.
We have no executive session. If there is nothing else to come before this meeting, we are now adjourned.